Alright, today we are going to bleed the brakes of a 2015 Yukon Denali, and this is a total bleed to get new fluid in this. I do it usually every 2 years. So first thing we want to do is suck out all of the brake fluid from this reservoir at the master cylinder, and to do that use a syringe, and then I just have a bucket here that I squirt it all into because brake fluid is caustic and you don't want to get it on anything. Woo. This will take a while. You can just keep watching. Okay, once you got that all sucked out of the reservoir, you want to add fresh and new brake fluid. It's important to use new brake fluid because brake fluid is hydrophobic, meaning it attracts water. So that's why you flush out the brakes, because you want to get any moisture out of those brake lines, which can compromise your braking and also potentially rust your brake lines. So anytime you add new brake fluid to your reservoir, use a new brake fluid that still has a seal. So I'm going to add this up here. Of course, make sure you use the DOT number that you have on your cap. This is DOT 3, so I like to use synthetics. I think they work better, so let me go ahead and add up in the reservoir. And quite clear, and the other was sort of a dirty yellow. Whenever you bleed the brakes, you always start from the circuit or the lines that go furthest away from the brake cylinder. So you flush out the brake master cylinder, so you flush out all the fluid. Of course, in an American car, that is the right rear. And so here we are, the right rear of the tire. In this car, the brake bleed nipple is back behind there. And so in this case, I think it's a 10 millimeter. And it is, so what we want to do is crack it loose a little bit so that when you pump the brakes, they will push the fluid through there. So I'm just doing a preparation. See, a little bit's coming out. Let me back it back off or tighten it back up for a second, explain the procedure. So you don't want to introduce any air into the brake lines. So I like to have someone in the driver's seat, and press the brakes. And so I say press, and they push on the brake, and they don't release the brake until I say, and they say stop when they're at the bottom of the brake pedal. And then when I close the valve, or excuse me, the nipple again, I say release, and then they can take their foot off, and at that time I have this closed. If I didn't have it closed, it could suck air back into the brake lines, which defeats the purpose here. So that's the procedure we use. We'll go ahead and do some, and then I'll probably get set up on the front brakes, which is just a little bit easier to see, so you can see and hear how we communicate with my helper in the driver's seat. All right, so now we are at the final stages here. I've gone through the rear and then the passenger side and the front, and then I'm here at the last stage on the driver's side of the front, which is the shortest line. And this is how I have it set up. Of course, I have a hose here with a bucket down there. I've already broken loose this bleed nipple. I did have to use a wrench because one of them was starting to strip. It helps break it free without stripping the shoulders on the nipple. The process I go through is my helper is ready inside the car, and I say push, and as he's pushing, then I open this slightly. Fluid will come out. He says stop when he's at the bottom. I close it, and then I say release, and when it's released, then I say push again, and we do that a few times. Again, I've already done this to all the corners, but I'm just going to show you this for demonstrative purposes. I usually do each side about 10 times, and then I rotate through. The fluid wasn't terrible, but you could definitely see that it was clearing up with the new fluid, which is what you're trying to go for. I want to give a special shout out to my late nephew, Will, who gave me this tube and also the syringe that I use every time I do a brake job and other jobs where I'm extracting fluid. And I appreciate him and think about him every time I do a brake job or use these hoses. I just keep this section in my toolbox. So, my helper ready in the car? Okay, give me a thumbs up. Ready? Push.
Stop.
Release. Push.
Stop.
Release. Push.
Stop.
Release. Okay, we just did that a few times here. As you can see, the fluid is very clear. I don't see any bubbles coming out of the clear tubing. And what we do is just snug this back up, put the protective dust cap back on, make sure you get your wheels back on, and when you test, just be a little cautious at first, just to be sure. This is obviously a life safety system of the car, and you want to make sure that it functions properly, and this is a small investment, and again, I do this every 2 years on all of my vehicles, just as an assurance that everything works properly. And it's also a great time to inspect if your cylinders are leaking or anything of that nature. All right, until next time, around the house.